you, man. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm going to try and win you over with my knowledge of the Canadian language. I'm not Canadian, but I know that this is a toque. And this is a shirt. For the North Americans from the southern part of North America, we call this a coat. Where I'm from in Austin, Texas, this is called a really cozy winter coat, which is why I bought it. I think it's pretty good, but it's not actually cold in here, so I'll take it off. I don't tend to travel lightly. I tend to carry a lot of stuff with me that gets me held up at customs, and it doesn't always work when I show up. Gotta be honest with you. Sometimes I'm trying to make it work, and I end up reversing polarity, at which point it blows up. And then I'm off to find a soldering iron. And on the way to find a soldering iron, I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to die because it's so freaking cold here. Someone from Toronto runs by in like little shorts and sandals. They're like, it's spring. And I'm like, I am going to freeze to death. The closest place to here to get a soldering iron, my first maker tip, is Canadian Tire. And I went in there and I saw this. And I was like, oh, man. Everyone here is going like, what's that? That's like a wee bit of crap hockey aisle. For someone from Austin, Texas, that's like a hockey paradise. There's things in there I've never seen before. And it just keeps going on. It goes around the corner too, right? And so it made me think this. I really love Canada. Thank you for having me here. It also explains why I have this awesome shirt. I bought it before I walked home because I thought, and it also why I have this. A couple of maker tips on this subject. Always travel with your multimeter. I have it. You can source soldering irons. And when you need to solder in a hotel room, do it in the bathroom. It's the room with a fan, and therefore you stand a much lower probability of setting off the smoke alarm and evacuating the entire hotel. Obviously it works, because that didn't happen yesterday. Lucky us. Okay. Hello. This is all the Twitter stuff up here. We can make this all interactive. I'll answer your questions sometime, tomorrow afternoon after I wake up after the party. I have spent a lot of my time, my career, working on product design. Most of the time I come to conferences like this, I come up to Toronto with y'all, and I talk about my hobbies. This time I'm going to talk a little bit about work. For the last 15 years, I've been doing a lot of product design. These are the example sampling of some of the products I've worked on over the past 13 years. Most of these were done when I was at Frog Design. And they all have very interesting user interfaces. One of them was the first multi-touch computer to come out on the market just before the iPhone came out on the market and became the multi-touch computer. One is a MP3 player that uses capacitive touch instead of a turning wheel or buttons. And another one is a heart rate variability monitor. And the last one is a 2-screen Android phone. Just really interesting user models. Not all of these were successful. The MP3 player claimed was the second place in market share, which meant there were like 4 of them sold. The rest were iPods. Oh, that went the wrong way. That's okay. Things don't have to work. Now I'm at a company called Argo Design that I'm a partner with. It just started, Mark Ralston, Mark Gauger, and we're going to focus on product strategy, design, and invention. We just are very passionate about things, designing them to hold in your hand, to have in your homes, your business, and your hearts, and we're just going to pursue that. But first, I am going to tell you a little bit about things I do in my spare time. I think you guys know me well enough to know that I spend a lot of time turning pages and playing with fire. This is my version of a geeky concert lighter. I've actually fired it up here before. It does show the waveform in the room that you hold it up with. Therefore, it's superior to other concert lighters and also quickly gets you kicked out of clubs or concerts, which is so not punk rock, and that argument does not work on a bouncer. For a long time, since it's not about fire, like I am not a pyromaniac, okay? And maybe I didn't, it's about the interaction. The fire shows something that you don't normally see, and that's really interesting to me. And I always thought, how could I make fire interactive? It's kind of counterintuitive, because we were taught our whole lives, don't interact with fire. The Kinect made this possible, turn a Kinect into a little theremin, and now you can get people controlling fire with a Rubens tube. And it's really fun to watch them dance around and change the waveform and see the things, and it's a very magical experience. It's not about the fire. I'm not a pyro. It's about the interaction. Okay, and that's what draws me to these things, which is why I also build things like this. This is a supermodel scale. It shows you your weight in the relative weights of supermodels. A scale is something that shows your weight in numbers. You get on it and you go like, oh, the numbers tell me whether to be happy or sad. The supermodel scale is always fun to get on. Supermodels are between 90 and 110 pounds. Humans are between like 100 and 400 pounds. So when you get on a supermodel scale, it's always really fun. It changes the interaction. Lifestyle step sequencer, this changed the interaction in terms of scale. It requires an entire crowd to even put together music with this thing. And it's 64 by 64 feet. And people aren't always that coordinated as a group. And therefore, it makes a lot of really ugly music. And you actually have to get to know the people around you and work together in order to make something pretty beautiful. It's a really kind of interesting crowdsourced interaction. This here is a life-size, well, bigger than life-size electromechanical game of Pong. It takes what is normally a digital interface and made it analog and really big, and also really slow, because we ran into, when we were doing user studies, and believe me, there were many formal rounds of user studies on this, but when we were doing user studies, we found that when you have a 300-pound gantry moving towards people at game speed, which when brought out into the real life was somewhere around 35 miles an hour, they got super nervous. This led to an interaction problem that we solved by making the game really, really slow. Then they would stand in front of it and not be so scared, but it also made it really easy, which is why the score remains 0-0 all night long. But it's still fun to watch. So between my professional life, my hobbies, I'm thinking a lot about the computing experience always. And these intersection between the digital and the physical world. Okay, and I can tell you that in the recent thoughts, me and Mark Ralston and a lot of people, it's really changing at a really, really rapid pace all of a sudden. The computing experience, product design as a field is changing. And I like to sum up the changes and call it something that I call the other singularity. So, what is the other singularity? How many of you know what the singularity is? About 20% of the room. That's okay. Let's define it. We got to know what the singularity is before we know the other singularity. The singularity is the moment when machine intelligence becomes greater than human intelligence. So AI becomes self-aware, hijinks ensue. There's friendlier version. When we talk about the singularity, we can't help but talk about it in a very lofty way. It's a really exciting, promising territory. We can think about things like economies that involve no money, the abolition of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, superhuman capability like Ray Kurzweil's respirosites that are nanobots in your blood that allow you to sit at the bottom of a pool for 20 minutes without breathing, or even eternal life, backing up your brain to the cloud like Rapture of the Nerds and Cory Doctorow, all great stuff. Then there is the other singularity. It's said a little like the other cousin, you know? We have our cousins. They're coming over, and then there's the other cousin. All right, so let me put it another way. Somewhere on the Star Trek Enterprise, there is a Sky Mall catalog. And I am very interested what is in that catalog. You see, because humans, being the creatures that we are, cannot resist putting technology towards more mundane or prurient pursuits. And we won't always have the Federation there to keep our ships clean. All right, there's probably some sort of Bible too. There's also a planet called Ficklin that's populated by people called the Amazonians. And when Jean-Luc says, computer, tea, Earl Grey, some guy in a warehouse, probably two of them, thumbing through like, you know, some sort of Astro People magazine goes, oh, here's some tea, bing. It's just low latency Amazon is what the replicator is. So here is often the chart. This is Ray Kurzweil's work about tracking the progress towards the singularity. This is the exponential technology curve. And what it shows us is the price of computing power over time. So how much computing power you can get for money over time. And it is rising exponentially, and therefore we should be able to buy enough circuits around 2045 to replicate the human brain. For you guys over there, I don't even know if the laser reaches there. Right? And if we think about all these things that we're talking about, the lofty things are kind of right up here, right? But there is a very interesting area that's not up there, that's kind of back here, right there. I call these the cast-offs of the exponential technology curve. And that means that once a new technology is created, old technologies may vaporize from, you know, like our brains, or more accurately, the technology blogs that we read. But it's not like they go away. They still exist. In fact, some of them get approved, they get them refined, but the cost plummets even faster as the exponential technology curve marches on its way. And this is a very interesting area. And I examined it for a while in two ways. One was a very fun way, provocative way. And as this audience knows, when I want to examine something, I throw a party. And I bring people to that party, and I use them as guinea pigs, and we look at technology together. So 2 years ago, when I was a Frog Fellow and still at Frog, we threw the South by Southwest Interactive Opening Party, and we chose as our theme the other singularity, and we examined how some of these cast-offs of the exponential technology curve would have impacts on our daily lives. And one thing we established as a provocation is technology is creating new experiences. Okay, no duh. It is, right? And we built this. So we called this our paint by RGB wall. It's 9 feet tall, and it's 64 feet long, and it's populated with 2,500 individually addressable 3-color LED lights. So about 1 every 4 inches. And we gave people rowboats and brushes, and they could paint the wall whatever they wanted to. But the interesting thing about this wall is it costs us as much to make as about a used car. And not like a good used car, not like a Datsun, like a like a really crappy Toyota, like a Toyota Tercel from 1984 and not the cool boxy one, okay? You know what I'm talking about, right? Not a lot, right? Well, next year it's going to cost half as much, and the year after that it's going to cost half as much. And the densities, pixels can get greater, and their capability can get greater. Before you know it, this is going to be wallpaper. You can be able to set the color whatever you want. Scary movies, scary wallpaper. So whole new experiences will come, and we're so familiar with digital being flexible, but the hardware is going to get flexible too. It's going to change familiar experiences. This is a book. It's the Gutenberg Bible, more accurately, not the Gutenberg Bible. I have that big a budget for the party. It's a Gutenberg Bible. But more accurately, it's a projector projecting the Gutenberg Bible onto blank pages. It's a book not unlike this one here that I've been using to present to you all. Hopefully we'll keep working out, right? And that is to say that we paint the pages with light. We use light as ink. So when you turn the page, you get the next page. Makes a lot of sense, right? Now, this is well-traveled ground in the interactive art world. There's tons of these, but we purposely did nothing else with it. when you turn the page, you get the next page. That's it. It goes on and on. Why? Well, we priced it out. The cost of making the book this way, we got a great deal on ultra short throw projectors, a little bit of still, a couple of cheap sensors, a laptop to run it all, was just a little bit more than printing out a large format 2x2 book. And we said someday, light will be cheaper than ink. Someday you may see a book like this, not because it's better, but because it's cheaper. You'll go to your printer and you'll get 3 options. You'll get the highly interactive book of the future. iBook, I don't know. Someone make up a good name for it. Go out and invent it. How about, and then you'll get a book with ink. It's very classy and popular in certain circles, especially around Brooklyn. And then you'll get light as ink. Cheap, can be delivered tomorrow. All right. By the way, I call this whole thing, and it doesn't really work so hot now because I moved it. Way to go. Let's see, sometimes you just adjust it, you jigger it, make sure it's close enough, far enough, turn the page, and does it wake up? Maybe. Wake up. Wake up. Ah, yeah. There it is. I call this skeuomorphism. We all know what skeuomorphism is. It's giving digital things the properties of real objects in order to get intuition out of it. So, you make the digital book look like a real book. You put the icons for the books on a bookshelf. This is skeuomorphism. It's giving real things digital properties to make them more powerful and less usable. So you pull away a little bit of intuition, but you get more power and maybe a lower cost. And that is skeuomorphism, another term I'm trying to coin. Sometimes technology is going to replace experiences altogether. This is something we built. We call him the Zen gardener. He's a robot who rakes a Zen gardener. Does it all by himself. You can also control him. He's very cute. He's got saw blades for wheels. But it raises the question, doesn't it, that isn't the whole point to rake the garden yourself? Like, that is the whole point of a Zen garden. Yes, there's beauty to experience afterwards, but you're supposed to meditate while putting the patterns in. Or maybe you'll meditate on the robot. Should these things even exist at all? Well, I don't know. We have to, because it's going to be in the Sky Mall catalog. And somebody's going to buy it, and they'll be like, I want my neighbors to think I'm meditating all the time. Buy me a Zen robot. And of course, then there are augmented reality porta potties. And what is an augmented reality porta potty? Well, it's only the best use of augmented reality ever. And luckily for you, I brought one with me. It's a great time to get your vines ready, okay? I need a volunteer. All right, just walk on up here. Someone who's brave and is not bothered by bad smells and is not too shy that they can't use the restroom in public. Okay. No, you can't. You don't have, there he is. Come on up. Ladies and gentlemen, a man without stage fright. I'm just kidding. Don't go while you're in there. All right, just go in there and stand up, and then we'll give you instructions after that. Let's see if it works. We all know what you're doing. He's like checking Twitter. All right, Twitter's not good enough. You need to do some Facebook. Let me sit down. Are you? Oh, there he goes. Lean forward a little bit. All right, you can come on out. He actually walked it. Thank you very much. I like to say the line between information and too much information is much longer than the line to that porta potty. And so with that technology in unexpected places, here's another installation of these things. This is a bank of 8 of them with the clocks running and everything. at a party. And besides really wanting to pester Sean and everyone, let's just thank Sean and tell him get well. The show has run amazing, and that's his hard work and the amazing work is of the amazing staff. Besides wanting to talk him into bringing a porta potty, I was like, dude, you got to rent me a porta potty. I wanted to do an experiment, practice the purpose. When we first did the augmented reality porta potties, generation 1, 3 years ago, the entire thing, bill of materials, cost me about $6,620. That activated 8 units, and that is a cost of $777.50 per unit. I decided to rebuild it so I could bring it here to the conference and let you all play with it and have fun. All the stuff that went into that one, not including the special box to get it here and through customs, cost me $189. So you are seeing the exponential technology curve and the cast-offs in action there. Truth is, these are both prototyping process costs. If I had focused a little more carefully, I think redoing this tomorrow, I could drop that by half. I think I could get it done for $90. If I moved to scale, I think I could get it done for $60 to $40. A couple of years from now, it'll be for $20, and you better bet your butt when you go to Coachella sometime soon, you're going to see these things. All right, so that's the fun side of it. We're going to start seeing this stuff. There is another side of this, okay? And it's an even more interesting part of it. It intersects more of my professional life. And it's still dealing with these cast-offs of the exponential technology curve. And it goes a little like this, okay? In 2005, and a device like this that had a certain amount of computing power had to justify its cost. It was very expensive. It had to justify its cost by supporting a whole bunch of functions. We had laptops yesterday, and we still have laptops, actually. They've gotten really small. They still have a high cost. It's sub 1,000 now, but that's good. And they have even more functions. And we really love them. We carry them everywhere. I mean, in a lot of ways, they are our babies. We hold them. We put them in our pockets. They cry. We feed them. They cry more. We feed them more. We really worry about their identities, and so we make clothes for them. We don't want them to get mixed up with other people's, right? They really are little versions of ourselves. We use them to live a second lifestyle, what I would call the digital lifestyle. Use them to live 2 lives. They really are us. They really are our babies in every sense of the word. They even have our DNA on them, and inside them, they have much of our soul and much of our knowledge, much of what we do on a daily basis, which makes it really awkward when our own children testify against us in court, which maybe the courts should think about it a little more that way rather than the current thinking. The point being is we stare into them constantly. We love this digital lifestyle. We love it. But the device itself, the form factor, is immersive. It's a digital tunnel with 50 lights at the end of it. It's literally immersive, like for biological, imperative reasons. When we look at it, we're looking for a line in the brush. We close out the whole rest of the world. And we immerse ourselves so completely, we will literally walk in front of a train while using them. Literally, right? And when you think about that, you think, really? I mean, really? We really do this everywhere? We sure do. People will choose digital immersion pretty much over physical safety.
Really?
Here's the good news. What I read this also a different way, okay? What this is really saying is we really value our digital lifestyles, right? And because we want them everywhere, and because we take them everywhere, we have created for them a digital life support system so that they'll never go away. We call this a lot of things. We call it the cloud. We put wireless signals, we put computing power, we built towers, we put energy into radio frequencies so that we can have our digital lifestyles and take these portals to it everywhere. There's a huge amount of value here. Then we're using that system, and part of the system was created. So we're using the system to give our whole spaces intelligence. Put in a whole bunch of sensors, and you can chase down efficiency in a building. And we're extending that infrastructure even further. And it's gotten to a point now where the computer itself really no longer has to be a single device. It barely is. 98% of it is just those experiences of our digital lifestyle that we want to immerse ourselves into. We could swap it out for anything. Now a computer, if you think of it as not a single object, it can be many pieces spread throughout our life. In fact, we're trending that way. The computer pieces are starting to span all over. We're even quantifying ourselves. So now, this is an interesting opportunity, also part of the other singularity. We can get in a nerd fight about this later. But essentially, the first PowerBook, like iBook G4, has the same computer power as the Nest thermostat. We used to have to justify its cost with many functions. Now, all that power, a third the cost, it can focus on just one thing. And in that focus, it creates extra elegance, craft, and capability. All that power in the Nest thermostat is focusing on just keeping you comfortable and giving you probably one of the world's simplest out-of-box experiences. Put in your SSID and your password. Ooh, we're all IT experts now. And then give it your zip code. And it algorithmically builds your schedule, and then it watches you twist it warmer, colder, and by 2 weeks it has you down cold. Start saving you 30% on energy, and wait until they start pushing apps out to it. But it's amazing, right? So now the old laptop has new purposes, and this means experiences no longer have to be trapped inside of apps, right? Apps are containers to divide our attention when we are immersed in the PC pattern of computing. This is an umbrella with just enough computing power to check the weather forecast. If it forecasted to rain, it turns on a light. So it sits at your door. If the light's on, it's going to rain, take it. That's a weather app. And I don't have to lock anything. So things that used to be apps are now sitting on our walls. Talked about the Nest thermostat. They also have a smoke alarm that's coming out that recently, controversially, you could wave at to tell it that you're burning toast, that the house is not on fire. Till someone realized that if you were on fire, you might be going, ah. Seriously, they recalled. They did put out a firmware update. It said, we're going to work on this a little more. I think that's a little nervous Nelly, but that's the society we live in a different discussion. That's the Canary security system. It has a bunch of sensors, and it learns your room. It learns the way you walk in the room. It learns the way your Myrtle beagle walks in the room. And rather than being a series of switches and if-else statements, it's algorithmic. It's pattern-based. It does security not by saying there's a barrier to entry, but looking for things that are abnormal. So it knows you got home because it knows you. It knows when the window opened that you're home, so you open the window. If someone strange then walked in the window, then it might alert and let you know that your daughter had let in their boyfriend. It disrupts the whole model, though. You don't need a services army to wire your whole house. You just buy it, you sit on the table, so they're planning on selling it for, I think, $250, and that's lifetime. No subscription model needed. This is going to be very disruptive. Or they might not be anything at all. If you have this computer all around you and it's watching you, you might be able to build your own experiences and your own interfaces, right? And that's going to feel pretty amazing. This is the kind of coding that I could get behind.
Computer. Light switch.
So, the mission used to be put one computer into one hand for less than $1,000. That is no longer the mission. Now the mission is put 1,000 computers into a home for $1,000. And each one of those computers is focused on a single experience and solving an issue for the user with more elegance, capability, and craft. And that's going to be amazing. The old mission used to be get your software onto someone's device. Install, SEO, be on the top of the store. Now the mission is get your experience into their lives. Okay? And the good news is, it won't all be done by Google. I'm having lunch with Robert Wong tomorrow, so this will be an interesting conversation. That is to say that we have this shared infrastructure, and part of it is massive amount of communication, which a lot of it is grouped around affinity, and allows us to talk to each other and create movements. Right? The pace of communication is creating the quantum subconsciousness. It's this like intertwined where in quantum entanglement in like 11 dimensions means when you have a moment of inspiration, 11 other people have that same moment of inspiration. And whoever acts on it first is going to get funded. No, what we're doing, what's happening is, another thing that's happening in this as derivative of this exponential technology curve and its cast-offs is we are creating a new class, the maker class, people who use modular microcircuitry, localized manufacturing, the open source movement in order to build their own things, right? So it used to be, this is leading then to the rise of the adhocracies, right? Adhocracies are affinity groups that are passionate enough about an idea to go ahead and take it over. It's a great concept by Cory Doctorow. It comes up and down out in the Magic Kingdom. Read the book, it's fantastic. Read everything by Cory Doctorow, okay? All right, so it used to be you want a Cthulhu pony, you needed to be a sculptor, or you needed to get a setup and a factory, lots of money. Now if you want a Cthulhu pony, find someone who loves Cthulhu ponies, download it, print it out. Lots of Cthulhu ponies. It's not just limited to Cthulhu ponies, though. The adhocracies are doing amazing things right now. What if you wanted maybe a Nest thermostat? Well, there's a couple guys that created one for $70, and that's a product that just came out. Now, it may lack a little bit of the elegance, but it actually does function, and it actually does learn algorithmically, and it's all done inexpensively. Big companies are not immune from the adhocracies. Even someone as great and mighty and powerful as Apple, you want a feature on the iPhone, get enough people together, jailbreak it, get your feature. You want some GPS Oxfords? Make them. One light's distance, the other light is direction. You are now officially a shoegazer. How about a lawn care robot? It was in Japan, and people were like, what's a lawn? Okay. They got the Zen robot a lot better. This guy made this project. It does like the kind of 3 times a year chore of putting things out on your lawn, be it seed or be it some sort of fertilizer or amendment, right? $200, 3 days, you can recreate it. That should have been iRobot's next product. It's not because of an adhocracy and the make movement. Smartphone vending machine. There's one right out in the lobby. Asked them what they made it for. It was a statement about this could be done. So you want coffee cup people? Build a 3D scanner. You want a car for your pet fish? Make a car for your pet fish. How about a real car, right? These are $400 million mega corporation electric cars that I regard as being about as exciting as a Christmas sweater. And then there's this thing. Now, big manufacturers have a challenge when this is what's seeded in your imagination is like a really fun electric car. It's a chibi cart, and it's amazing. It's a weekend project if you're at MIT in the Media Lab, but give it a few years, and we'll be buying those in the aisles of a sports store and assembling them ourselves. I mean, the motor too. How about a real car, right? This is an open source electric vehicle. You can download the plans. This one was assembled for about $2,500, I believe, which means they got a hell of a deal on those rims, and probably because they're super 90s. And according to their blog, they built it in a weekend. Not quite street legal yet, but give them a couple more weekends and they'll have it there. And it didn't take $400 million. Right, so this is the make movement. And this class of makers is creating a whole new class of products. Right? They're not just hobby projects. Some of these things go out. They take advantage of the new funding models, and they become real products. And what they're really doing is attacking this middle market, this $50 million and $100 million market that used to be something that big companies have a hard time reaching into. Now 3 guys, an idea, an adhocracy, and a little bit of funding can reach into that market. And sometimes they can make a lot of money there, right? Sometimes they just make a huge difference. There's 10,000 deployments of the iWriter now. It's helping people everywhere. Now, this creates a dilemma, though, for the professional designer, capital D professional product designer. The dilemma is this. You could be partway through a huge vision program for a big client who's spending a lot of money. You're like 6 weeks in, so you've had all your workshop and your great ideas. You're in the middle of rendering, and it shows up on YouTube. And you're like, crap. Or worse, it's on Kickstarter. Now you're like, super crap. And so how do we deal with this? How do we deal with all of these changes that are happening to product design and the old way of like, let's skunk works this, let's get the IP in place, let's make sure that it validated against a mass market in the bell curve, and then let's put it through, and 5 years later we'll have a product. I used to joke, people say I live 5 years in the future because I'm doing product design. And it takes 5 years to get to market. And it really sucked to shop for phones because everything was crap because you knew it was coming out in 5 years. It's a 2-year market now. It really is. All right, well, you have to change how you design. I've taken on a new credo. Kind of worked this way all along, but recently it became a lot more my credo. It's think by making, deliver by demo. It brought to me by Joshua Noble, who's an amazing guy, right? So you got to take on the skills of the make movement so that you can practice this in your ideation and your innovation and your creation. Learn to solder. That way, when someone comes to you and says, how should we get voice recognition into a car? I could go ask a bunch of people, what would you do with voice recognition in a car? Well, in the western parts of the country, when they're not familiar with an idea, and you ask them what they think of it, they just lie to you. And then you have to spend a lot more money doing a lot more sophisticated kind of design research in order to find the truth, right? Or you could just build a voice-controlled mirror and start playing with it and see what's good.
Blind spot. Okay. Blind spot. Okay.
So that's what we did there, and we called it the Jedi mirror. And so rather than ask people what experiences they might value in innovative technology, we set up a sandbox and asked the technology, what kind of value do you have to offer the users? And we found a lot of good and bad stuff, and it's really amazing. It's like kissing or golf. You're not always doing it perfect, but when you get it right, you know. You really know. It was the same way with this. Once we built it, we knew that this was not working. And blind spot felt really good. And even though it's got some frayed edges, you now have a vector. You now have a direction, and very early in the process, and you've actually felt it. You've not just imagined it. And your imagination can leave you into some troublesome places. We have to change a little bit about how we think. We think about computers as unipary and objects. We have this metaphor that we built up around them from the 70s onward, that they're a corpus, that they're like the human body, that the CPU is the hard drive is the memory. and all this kind of stuff. And that's just not true anymore. It's now a distributed thing. We should think, I think one reason we thought that is we want to think as humans we're greater than machines, but now they're everywhere. They're all around us, right? And when we're thinking about experiences, we need to think of them as being really seamful, participating fully in our lives. We need to think of them as choreographed. They aren't isolated silos, that they can all work together in a really coordinated manner. In terms of product and industrial design, we used to think about the properties of color, line, form, and mechanism. And they are still very important base concepts, but we're now adding to them new properties. Those of data, algorithm, agency, and policy. What's it responsible for, and how does it execute that? This way we can create full experiences. So incorporate those practices into your thinking, better product design, better designer in general, and a better participant in the digital world. And this leads us to my last chapter. I'll close on this chapter, and this is a fun chapter. When you take all these things and bring them together, they are foreshadowing the next pattern of computing. We've kind of gone through two phases, and in the first one we had the mainframes and we were operators. And then we're in the one that we're in now, kind of this one here. And I would call this the peak operating efficiency of the personal pattern of computing. We already covered its benefits, and we're users, right? But it has its frayed edges, and they go like this. There's shame, fear, and frustration with this pattern of computing. And we've all experienced this stuff. Fear. We've all experienced smartphone fear. And it's like, I went to the Bahamas, check out these photos. I hand it to you, and you start swiping, and then I immediately think, oh God, don't swipe one more time. It's a personal computing pattern, and that's about to become a habit. That's smartphone fear. Frustration is, why am I unlocking this thing to check the weather? Shame, when you bring it out and immerse yourself in it at the wrong moment. It's happened to all of us. So, the values on the other side of that is we want part of our digital lifestyles to be heads up and present, one where we actually continue to participate in the environment. We want a side of this experience that is also cooperative, not entirely personal, where two people can work on the same interface. I'll do 2 for 1 here, shame and cooperative. Have you ever had that discussion where you're like, Matthew Broderick was not in that movie. He was too, right after Ferris Bueller. Like, no way, no way. And eventually you give up and you're like, okay, let's go to IMDb. And the guy's like, oh, look, man, I'll bet you a beer, I'm going to IMDb. And then rather shamefully, you're like, I can't see what he's doing. I'm going to IMDb too. Why me? And then, of course, there's the business of 7 people, 7 laptops, 1 document, right? We want things to be more cooperative. We should be able to do those experiences together. Also, we want things that can mark up the physical world. So like small, delightful moments from our digital lifestyle can be present casually in our real world, right? And that leads us to a computer that doesn't look like a personal computer. It's all around us, and hopefully good and benevolent, right? So the city is the new computer. Buildings are a new computer. And my favorite, because it's something that I can chew on, the room is the new computer. Okay, and there's a whole new pattern of computing that happened to it. But that leads to the next issue, which is how does one interact with the room? Touch is very close and rooms are very big. Well, you're going to need room-sized interactions and room-sized outputs, right? So rather than think of this as like having to build a new house for a new experience, we've come up with a provocation that makes sure you could retrofit this into your life, right? Imagine, because of the other Singularity, this is another Singularity product concept. The real thing is being worked on by Nitin Linder and his company Luminar, right? Smart bulb, imagine putting sensors, pico projector, computer, networking into a form factor that can screw into a light bulb, right? Imagine doing the same pattern of sensors, array microphone, 3D depth sensing microphone into a wall switch. Just wire it in, and suddenly you've given this capability to your household. Now you have a room that can see you, it can hear you, and it can talk to you, either through speakers or through light projected on horizontal surfaces. So now you have a room-sized input and output, right? And now, this means you can interact with it like it's a housemate. All right. And what does that look like? Well, I brought one with me, so let's fire it up and see. All right, this is a technology demo. It's done live, which means it's like juggling. The juggler will drop a ball. It always happens. And everyone goes, ooh, I feel bad about the juggler. The juggler doesn't feel bad. He drops them all the time. Pick it up and go again, all right? So let's see how this thing works right now. Don't feel bad when the ball drops. All right, let's go full screen here. Let's go here. All right. So, it's two dominant forms of voice computing. I'm going to introduce you to a third one, natural language computing. This is what Siri does. It's great for moments of divided attention, and it's great for concierge services. But if we were to use it in this capacity, it might go something like this. Computer, is it dark in here? Computer, is it dark in here? Oh, it would be helpful if I wasn't on mute. Did you hear the bing? That's a good sign. First ball dropped. Not technically, because if you were watching the porta potty, it was like kind of flaky on the sit action. But that's because guys don't know how to sit. Computer, is it dark in here? Computer, is it dark in here? It's not here. Computer, is it dark in here?
Yes, the room is quite dark. Would you like me to turn on light 1, light 2, or all of the lights available?
It kind of went exactly how it would go, right? You ask 3 times, and then it says that. There is an uncanny valley to voice. That's what we discovered. It's not appropriate. If my roommate talked to me like that, I would slap them. So the next thing is command computing. Command computing is what we see on Star Trek, and it goes something more like this. See if this works. Computer, turn on light 1. Two problems with that. I know in technology works. That's good because it's very empathic and it has stage fright, so the more comfortable you make it feel, the better it'll work. I only write empathic code. Like the engineers in the room are going, that means shitty code. It's not optimized or formed correctly. That's long. 2 problems. It's long. First of all, not a lot of people want to sound like Jean-Luc Picard in their own home. No, I don't want to talk that way. Makes me feel silly. Also, there's a problem in form. We could shorten it. Like we could take out the addressing and just say, turn on light 2, right? But then you get command stacking problem, right? It's easy when you have 2 lights. If you have 5, you got to remember all the numbers and the lights. Maybe you'll give them names. Well, then you don't have just lights, you have volume. And you end up with object, modifier, property. And after that, you add feature. Next thing you know, you have 10,000 commands, and you have to be a starship captain in order to remember them all. Or we all adopt some sort of convention in order to organize it all out, and that's not going to happen. So that's a big problem with command commuting, right? So I'm going to have to do Jean-Luc Picard a little more. But what if it worked like this, right? What if you just went, turn off that light. Turn off that light. Turn off that light. Turn on these lights. Maybe we don't have to talk at all, right? Just wave hands at it or something. So I call that conversational computing. And it's really what Rumi is all about. If you watch the videos and stuff, that's all the features are time-honored science fiction traditions. What it really is about is showing an interaction model about that would work elegantly with room-size computing. All right, a conversation is not just words. There's also non-verbal communication. So the idea struck upon it here was, intuition that comes from social mimicry. That's the way we work. I could say, turn on the computer. This entire room knows whose job it is to turn on the computer, right? And the computer can work the same way. I could say, turn off the lights, right? And it should, and that's the way it works. I could be like, Sarah, turn on the lights, right? So this solves a couple of problems for us, conversational computing. One, it gives you an intuition in which an interaction can get deep and rich. Second, it solves the crazy guy with the Bluetooth problem. I'm in the park square and I'm doing this, la, 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 la. Or I'm at home going, computer, Earl Grey tea. People are like, dude, you crazy. But if I have my smartphone out and I'm going, la, 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 people are like, oh, he's on the phone. He's not crazy. And if I was like, computer, turn on the lights, you all know who I'm talking to. I'm no longer crazy. I feel comfortable doing it. It happens. How about this? Show me the weather. It's really tiny right here. Make it warmer. Warmer. That's too warm. So you saw another problem with command computing there. Warmer, warmer, warmer. So but we can get co-verbal on it and just do this. Okay, that's a nice setting right there. So that's our room E. Turn on light 1. I have a longer video here that has a couple more features. I'm going to show it real quickly. Turn on the lights. I'm actually going to skip past the light part because you all saw that. Sorry. Turn on the lights. No, I think we have to let it play through. Turn off this light. Turn off that light. But now you guys know I filmed this a lot of times how I got to turn on these lights. I'll also tell you this was not best of class technology. This is 14 days of code, maybe. And it's 5-year-old technology. That part will be solved by PhDs, and a lot of it is ready for the market now. I just didn't use it or have access to it. I work expediency
Jared.
to get the design. Here we're solving the problem with every meeting. Am I in the right conference room? It knows I'm a guest because it recognizes me. It gives me the SSID.
Show me the
password.
backyard.
That's more science fiction. I'm looking through walls. I'm looking at my backyard. Notice how the light doesn't hit the laptop. We find that makes
Hide the backyard.
screen, suck the light into the table. People are more willing to reach in.
Show me the weather. Make it colder.
This is before I built the
Colder.
gesture version, so I have to say colder a few times.
Let's order takeout. What did I order last time?
So it knows where
Order
I'm looking.
that.
So it puts it right there.
Let's order takeout.
It knows where I'm looking. Puts it right there.
What did I order last time?
Puts it right there.
Order that.
It knows what I'm doing. So
Reply to this tweet.
I said reply to this tweet.
Say, this video is awesome.
I like my own videos.
Send.
Okay, so there's more to social mimic. A lot of those experiences are really interesting. They're like ones you can think of, but there's little touches in them. You'd be surprised. The tweet one, like all the affordance is there to reply to a tweet. But it's really nice. It's a really tiny gap, but it's really nice not to lose your place. And just when you do it in the room, you're like, reply to that tweet, and then you say whatever you want and say send, and then you go back to browsing. It just feels great. That level of coordination would be awesome. Social mimicry. How do you solve the false positive problem? Usually when I've been doing this long, one of these has flickered on and off, so you guys really made the technology courageous. Use more social mimicry. Just like I described it, you could build that into the system. This video will show you how.
Turn on the lights. Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights.
Did you get it?
Turn on the lights.
Light turns on
Turn
when
on the
I'm
lights.
looking at it, and it only listens to me when I'm looking
Turn
at it.
on the lights.
Same thing that happens with humans. It's not in this video, but I
Goodbye.
can also say, computer, turn off the lights, and it will do it. So when I'm not looking at it, I can address it, computer, turn on the lights, what I'm looking at. So it can solve that kind of problem. But this also means that the computer itself can live in the room and solve that Bluetooth problem. It gives us an object to talk to. No one thinks we're crazy. But also means this computer could use social mimicry as well and solve that uncanny valley problem. So watch, this is a video made by a coworker of mine, Goose from Amsterdam. He was a coworker when we were at Frog. And there it is once. Watch again. Wait for it. Computer's just in the room. There it is. We don't need Siri's awful voice to talk back to us. We can have a real participation. And finally, sometimes it'll just look like magic. In this environment, you could have smart, dumb things. This is not all fantasy. The bulkheads are out there. Cable companies, smartphone companies, Google. There's a reason Xbox One is always on. Xbox, what's steak at medium rare? A couple accessories, and it becomes a lot of this stuff, right? So it's right there in the middle. Boom. So here's a closing thought. For a very long time, we've been creating really big systems. And when we did that over the last 30 years, and that was our main mission, we created a lot of gaps. Now is a great time. Like the next 20 years, a great design mission is going to be in those systems, find those gaps. And I promise you that great value comes from closing small gaps. And you're going to see this in the product design story over and over and over, right? When I show Room E all the time, there's one moment that people just think is the best. And it's the tiniest moment. It solves that debate you have when you're about to leave at the door and you realize you have left the lights on. And you ask yourself, how much pride, how much money, how much time would it cost you if you just left versus walking over and turning the lights off? But what if you could just say, goodbye, goodbye, and they went on. Thank you. Let's go party.